All right, welcome to the CJW Podcast.
Woohoo!
Our first episode. It's almost like a pilot. All right, last night, we're recording this on Thursday, and you're listening to it on Friday. So when I say last night, I'm talking about Wednesday night.
Wednesday night Dynamite, to be correct.
Exact, even. So we had finally the very first episode of AEW on TNT. And that was after 4 pay-per-views, the last of which we actually went to, and that was amazing.
That was amazing.
So All Out was seriously the greatest wrestling event I've ever actually been there and witnessed live.
Better than Hell in the Cell?
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know. Yeah, I have to agree with you. All Out was totally better.
We went to WWE Hell in a Cell a couple of years back. It was when Kevin Owens was fighting Shane. That was great.
And I called it. I have to put it out in the universe. I said that Sami Zayn is going to come out.
Sami Zayn, you mean?
Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn is my cat. Sorry about that.
We also at that event, that was the Usos versus the New Day in a Hell in a Cell match. That was amazing.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But
I thought that was the best tag match I've seen until I saw the Escalera de la Muerte.
And that was a thing of beauty. But we're not here to talk about the past, well, at least not the distant past. We're here to talk about the last night past, which was the very first episode of AEW Dynamite on TNT. And so let's just jump right on into it. What did you think of the show?
I thought it was so much fun. It was so fast-paced. I didn't fall asleep, which, is awesome, because usually by 8 o'clock I'm out. But no, it was a really good first episode, and I'm excited to see what's gonna come next.
All right, well, let's just take it step by step, starting from the beginning. The intro, I think, is really cool, as well as the color scheme of the entire show, with all the rainbows and particle effects that were happening as, people were being thrown around. There'd be, bursts of, flamey colors, and, the entire thing, It came to me in the shower this morning, which is where I do all of my best thinking.
Uh-oh.
Our shower curtain completely reminds me of the intro to AEW Dynamite.
Our shower curtain is just a mass of just random color splatters. And yeah, I have to agree with you. I loved the color scheme. Something about it just meant all-inclusive, just everyone's welcome. It was such a fun, light effect that I thought it really added to the show.
Yeah, usually you've got, WWE Raw, and that's all just, straight red, and then you've got SmackDown, which is blue, and then you've got AEW Dynamite, and it's just we're everything.
Absolutely. And pyro. You can't forget the pyro.
Yeah, well, WWE has now gone back to the pyro. It almost kind of eclipses what AEW is doing. Just, I don't know if it's just missing the super loud sounds or whatever, but it kind of feels a little flat to me. But when they get into the giant fire spurts, that looks really cool. And it's kind of awesome to see all that back, because it's been 2-3 years since WWE quit using pyro.
I hope Pharaoh was in a safe place.
Yeah, I'm sure he was. But actually, that's probably a part of their mindset with getting rid of the mortars and making sure that the sounds aren't too overly explosive. They're doing the sensory inclusive thing. Mm-hmm. So for autistic children and stuff who have bad reactions to loud noises, so they're probably trying to keep those people in mind, which is kind of awesome, actually. So they started off the show with a video package about Sammy and Cody, which is it's a different style than what we're used to from like WWE. Kind of more of like an actual sports documentary sort of a thing, something you might see like on an HBO boxing special or something like that, which gives it more of like an authentic, realistic feel, and less artificial story driven, which I totally appreciate. What did you think?
Well, I feel at this point they have to introduce the characters. They kind of have to go off like, we can't expect everyone to know all of our wrestlers. We have to introduce each and every one and then develop the storylines from there, which I think they did really well with Sammy and Cody.
Yeah, it's really good stuff. As far as everything went, it was just boom, the show starts, and boom, here's the intro, and boom, here's the video package, and then boom, straight to the match. Within 5 minutes, they were already into the wrestling action, which, again, far cry from what we're used to with WWE, where it's 20 minutes of people talking and rambling back and forth, and you have no idea what's going on. Actually having the full card, like, ahead of time, and having them actually stick to it was such a refreshing thing for me. Like, you know what you're getting into, like, the second the show starts, and then it just delivered on pretty much all of it. Mm-hmm. So the first match, again, that was the Sammy and Cody match, and it was a really good match. It really set the tone for the show. What were your thoughts?
I thought it was good. There was a lot of high flying, a lot of good maneuvers. Brandy, hello, looked amazing. Wow, amazing. And those shoes, man, completely glittered out, and she got Sammy Guevara pretty good in the back of the head with those shoes.
Well, he kind of had it coming.
She took a pretty good bump there.
Yeah. Sammy was outside the ring, and Cody was revving up to do a suicide dive. Brandy was chastising Sammy outside the ring, and when Cody went to dive through the ropes, Sammy pulled Brandy into the way so that Cody ended up colliding into her. But she ended up getting him back, smacking him in the head with her shoe when the ref's back was turned. The ref was Aubrey Edwards.
Yes, amazing.
She's so good. She's a joy to watch. I mean, usually, like, I don't ever pay attention to refs, but, like, she manages to not really impede upon the wrestling in the match, but, like, her presence is so, I don't know, it's just, like, authoritative.
She's very strong. She's very formidable. She has control of the ring. Her actions are precise. Like, girl knows what she is doing, and she's not going to let anyone push her around. She may weigh 100 pounds less than these men and be a foot shorter, but believe me, she's the boss in that ring.
Another thing that really added to the atmosphere of this match was that crowd.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
14,129 people is what they said was there and in seats. I think there's like one shot of maybe like 30 seats on the main floor that were empty.
They were all in line for merch. That's what I'm going with.
It's not like it hasn't happened to us. But That was it. Like every aside from that, like every seat that you saw was filled, or if it wasn't filled, it's because people were standing up and cheering, and that was some good stuff.
Yeah, I have to admit, after being to quite a few WWE shows and now going to All Out, like the crowd vibe is definitely different at an AEW show. Like the crowd's into it, they're screaming more, the chants and just the pure appreciation of the fans. Like after a good sequence of movements, like people are clapping and revving the wrestlers on, and it's just a different vibe, and it's great.
Yeah, it's really impressive. Also, like the respect that's given. These are people who they're into the match, and you know, after like a good solid move or stuff, like they're applauding. An AEW crowd almost feels like a Japanese crowd, having Though that's going to change from region to region. I think with All Out and with last night with the premiere, you're getting kind of like this cross section of like the hardcore fans from all over the place. But like when you go from like one city's going to react differently than another, depending on how big, I guess, of a wrestling town they are. Some cities are going to chant more than others, that sort of thing. I know like Chicago's a crazy town, and it's amazing, and it's different.
The horse got the chant too. Horse, 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 horse.
There was when Adam Page at All Out came out on his horse. When the horse was returning backstage, our area that we were sitting in was right there at that side entrance, and a horse chant broke out. That was
it's one of the best stuff. Moments of my entire life.
So Sammy was wrestling, and he had like this awful panda bear bedhead. Which
I don't know what's going on with that. Like,
it's just his hair is
like in disguise, or like
no. Well, he always every time I've seen him wrestle, like that's just kind of like his gig. He's got the big giant. I
know there's some story behind it, and I can't remember.
Going, kind of wearing as like a costume.
I don't know, like there's something meaningful behind it that I need to look up.
I'm really hoping that it's a Syphil and Ali reference, and like nobody listening is going to actually understand what I'm saying. But there was this old MTV TV show with sock puppets, and one of the sock puppets sang this song about how badass pandas are. I'll probably have to include a clip right about here.
Insert clip here.
The panda is indeed the most mysterious of all creatures.
Can somebody have him
shrouded
shaved?
in the enigma of its black and white coat. What? What kind of camouflage is this, black and white? Hiding in an Oreo factory? Could be. That's just another chapter in the Omnisaga of Panda. The pandas are coming to rip off your head. The pandas are coming on a rampage of the dead.
All right, so the commentary team, again, is another breath of fresh air. JR finally kind of feels like he's shaken off his, we'll call it ring rust, and is getting back towards like the top of his game. And Schiavone, I thought, also added really well. And Excalibur has been solid, since we've been watching him do the other AEW pay-per-views. He was always kind of more of a highlight. So he was kind of at the top of his game as well.
Yeah, I think you definitely need the younger guy in there. Excalibur, I think, is doing an amazing job. I think he's only going to get better, but at least he can name the new moves that maybe the old school guys don't really know, or the new wrestlers, because Jim Ross for a while didn't know who was who, but he's getting better. He's getting better.
Yeah, and actually, like, they called the moves, which is not... I've heard that Vince is not big on that sort of play-by-play style of actually calling out the moves. It's been something... I'm used to, like, old-school ECW, where you've got, like, Joey Styles on the stick, and he knows, or at least he can fake it. He seems like he knows absolutely everything. So he's calling the moves by name, which I feel has kind of been missing in the last few years since we kind of got back into wrestling. So having like an actual knowledgeable commentary crew is just, it adds so much to the immersion. And and another thing that they weren't doing that I noticed, and it added so much, was when they're calling a match, they're just calling the match. They're not talking about the storylines of stuff that happened earlier in the show or is going to happen later in the show. Like, their focus is on the action that's on screen, which keeps you from being, as a viewer, being distracted from what it is that you're trying to watch on the screen. So it's not pulling you out of the match every few seconds when they start talking about how, coming up later, Roman Reigns is going to be, addressing Brock Lesnar, that kind of stuff. It's like, no, they are just on the task at hand. And that adds...
I hope they keep it that way. I think it seems to make it a little bit more legitimate, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word.
It does. It makes it makes the match that you're watching feel important. It doesn't take away from its importance. It's like, if it's on screen, it should be important enough to be the thing that they're talking about. Because if they're going on and they're discussing things that are not happening right in front of you, then it's like you can either pay attention to what you're seeing visually, or you can pay attention to what the story that they're telling. But if those two things aren't in sync, it's kind of like, you can only focus on one or the other. If you're only going to focus on your main event, then make your main event the entire show, because otherwise, you're not getting full enjoyment of everything else that's happening.
So Cody wins the match. Sammy goes to give a goodwill gesture handshake, and then
Jericho comes up from behind and attacks Cody and just beats the heck out of him. And that was another bit of presentation that I absolutely loved. One of the things that they've been doing on SmackDown the last few years is kind of having like a split screen sort of thing where they cut to commercial, and the commercial takes up like 2/3 of your screen, and then you've got kind of the little window on the side, which is still showing you what's going down in the arena. And
because we would have missed a lot. I mean, a lot of action happened when they were in the commercial break.
And this is something that I think the fans that were in attendance have to really appreciate as well. If you've ever been to a live television broadcast, when they cut to commercial, everything more or less stops. Or if they're in the middle of a match, they kind of try not to progress what's going on in the match for the few minutes that they're on a commercial break. So while it's continuing on, there's going to be these super long rest holds, or things that like they're not going to be doing like high spots. They're not going to really. It's almost like they pause the in-ring storytelling and just kind of slow it to a crawl. But in this show, they're utilizing that fully. So yeah, just Chris Jericho just beat the living crap out of Cody. Just was hitting him with chair shots. He set up a couple of chairs and then slammed Cody into him. He was just making Cody suffer, and it went on throughout the entire commercial break. So that when they got back from commercial, he was just finishing up, but you didn't feel like you missed anything. And for the people in attendance, like it wasn't ruining their enthusiasm in the moment. So, because if you've ever actually been to one of these shows, it's like you go from like, all right, I'm really invested in this match, to okay, now I'm bored, because they're not really doing anything, because they don't want the television audience to be missing out on parts of the match. So love that. That's some really good stuff. So Chris Jericho finished taking him out, and then what happened? Next, the next match was between MJF and Brandon Cutler. Now, Brandon Cutler is a old buddy of the Young Bucks who has been in and out of wrestling for a while. He's kind of gotten back into it, and they've signed him to a contract. But he kind of was playing the role of enhancement talent during this. So MJF was not taking him seriously at all. MJF came out and he just verbally obliterated him because he's so good at that.
Yeah, I hate him. He's such a but I know that's the point, so he's doing his job very well, but I just want to punch him in the stomach.
MJF has this old school heel rock thing where he's so charismatic that he kind of almost runs the risk of, like, when he's insulting the crowd, of getting them to not really respond to him as if he's a heel cutting them down. But like the awesome thing is with him is that the crowd goes along with it. Like, they actually respect like the heel face alignment. So the bad guy's insulting them, and they're like, well, they're not like, well, this guy is hilarious and funny and charismatic, so we're going to cheer him anyway. They're like, getting offended and ticked off and really treating him as if he is this dastardly bad guy, which made this match completely work. They were on Cutler's side, even though I don't know if anybody in that arena had ever even seen him wrestle before.
I mean, from being the Elite, you just kind of know him as the camera guy, but he had some moves. I was impressed. I wasn't expecting much, to be honest with you, but no, I was impressed. He did a couple flippy things, but that match ended really weirdly to me. Did you hear anything? Did he get injured or anything?
No,
that? It just ended weirdly. I don't know if he was faking a knee injury, but it seemed like I don't know.
Near as I could tell, on the first viewing, it seemed a little awkward because what ended up happening was Brandon had gotten some offense in, and then he went up onto the top ropes, and then when he got up there, it looked like he was having trouble keeping his balance.
Yeah.
And then he ended up just jumping down, but when he did, he started favoring his leg as if he had injured his knee. And then MJF, he ended up charging across the ring towards MJF, who pulled the ref in front of him. And then within seconds, it was over. But honestly, I think if that wasn't the plan,
they covered it up well.
Yeah, I don't think he was actually injured. I think it was supposed to be that he's so green that he went up top and he couldn't pull it off and, kind of screwed himself up. And that gave MJF the opportunity to be able to just, squish him. I think that's what they were going for, but it was kind of sloppy. It just
ended. I'm like, wait a minute, what happened? But I do have a question. I know WWE is pretty scripted. Is AEW scripted in any, or do they have touch points or whatever? Because I feel like MJF is one of those guys you gotta let him just run wild because he's gonna say some gold. You don't know when or where. But I feel it's in
terms
there.
of promos, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. From what I hear, they don't have scripts. They're going back to the bullet point system of these are the things you have to cover when you're out there and you're on the mic, and how you get there is up to how you are as when you're in character.
Oh, good.
So it's
that'll be fun.
It's kind of half improv, but also at the same time, I think they're also they're kind of working it out in their head ahead of time. But it does add a level of spontaneity. You don't get these bits where they're like, oh my gosh, what's my next line? Awkward pauses, things like that.
Or where you can literally see Roman Reigns' brain working, trying to remember what he's going to say next.
Yeah, right. Luckily, he's gotten a lot better. I think they finally started letting him be more of himself. As long as we get away from that Suffer and Succotash style stuff. But that's a different company. AEW is what we're talking about today and every week, every Friday.
On the CJW Podcast.
Okay, so one of the things that really kind of stuck out to me in this match is it's kind of this thing that I have with Tony Schiavone, where when he's talking about MJF, it's obvious that he doesn't like him, but he kind of gets this tough guy thing.
He called him a prick, didn't he?
Yeah, and it's the wrestlers are supposed to be the top guys when it comes to combat, the combat sport of professional wrestling. These are the guys you hire to do the ass kicking. So it seems to me it does kind of pull me out of it a bit when an old guy like Tony Schiavone is trying to talk these guys down and insult them. It's why doesn't MJF go and just beat his ass? Yeah, it's something that does kind of pull me out of it a bit. So I'm really kind of hoping that we see less and less of that, because it's for the most part, love Schiavone's calling, but when he just kind of gets these moments where he's almost trying to put himself over, that it's just I find it kind of obnoxious.
Agreed.
All right, so the next bit, there was a commercial break when we returned. It was kind of weird, but I kind of dug it, but it's still kind of weird. Angelico and Evans interrupted the two celebrities that were in the front row.
Awkward.
Of Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith were in the audience. And they were being interviewed about their upcoming movie and stuff. And then Angelico and Jack Evans came up and were giving them crap. What did you think about C&J and Silent Bob?
It was weird. Like, I always feel weird when they insert the celebrities, like, into the storyline. But, like, and Helen Go and Jack Evans, like, what happened? Like, they came out, they bust some chops, and that was it.
Well, then,
like, I thought they were going to go into a match, maybe, or something, but, like...
But you know what I liked? Was that Jason Mewes, like they insulted, Angelico and Jack Evans insulted Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes. But then Jason Mewes was like, come on, guys, you haven't even won a match yet. And that's something that I dug. It's not that they just brought in these celebrities, but like the celebrities were actually able to talk to what was going on with these particular characters. So even if they were fed those lines, and I'm sure that they were, it seems like they were actual fans who had some knowledge of the product, which is a whole lot better than just like, you know, bringing in random TV guy
and having them smile and wave at the camera.
Right.
Look
exactly.
who's here.
But before Jason Mewes and Kevin Smith could get their butts kicked, Private Party ended up walking over. It was kind of awkward. They just handed them beers and then to Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes, and then they just like turned around and everybody walked away, and it was a really weird sort of ending to that segment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing they're setting up a storyline or something there, but that would have been a perfect opportunity to do the match. I mean, I know they weren't on the card, but it was just really weird. I didn't care for that little bit at all.
But one thing that I'm sure you did care for is after that, we got SCU just outside of the White House in Washington, D.C.
SCU.
What'd you think of your boy Scorpio Sky and his Obama impression?
Scorpio Sky is perfection. That's all I gotta say. His Obama was right on. Like, I was pretty impressed.
That was a pre-tape segment. They cut straight from that to them being interviewed up at the top of the ramp in the arena. So that was going on live. It was there that they basically informed us that when SCU fights in the upcoming tag team tournament to determine who's going to be the very first tag team champions, that Scorpio Sky is not going to be wrestling. It's going to be the veterans of the team, Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels.
Boo. I still thought that was a little awkward too. Like, that whole segment I felt was just weird.
Well, yeah, and then the Lucha Brothers then popped up and to interrupt them.
Like, if they would have like punched each other or done like a power slam, but like there was nothing. Like,
yeah, they kind of got pulled off each other almost immediately.
Yeah.
But I gotta say before we continue, the Lucha Brothers, they were all dressed up, all suave. Those guys have more style than I will ever have in my entire life. Just rocking the suits, but also with the masks. So when they came up and you know, basically just got all insulty and how they're going to take them down, they ended up getting into a fight. And then Aubrey Edwards was one of the first people to rush up to kind of break things up. And this I kind of found a little interesting. She just went straight for Christopher Daniels, got physical, you know, and grabbing him and trying to pull him away, which I found weird because earlier when Cody was getting, you know, obliterated by Chris Jericho, like, she didn't get physical. So it was, is Christopher Daniels, I guess, just less intimidating than Chris Jericho? I'm not entirely sure. But
storylines, but I was impressed that she went right in there and like was trying to restrain him, and I thought that was pretty cool.
So in my notes, somewhere around this time, I noticed that there was this kid, maybe 10 years old in the crowd, and he was dressed up like Orange Cassidy, which I thought was just adorable and kind of awesome. And it's also, Orange Cassidy gets a lot of flack. You know, he's very controversial because he's very comedic style wrestler. But seeing like a little kid who is an obvious Orange Cassidy fan, that kind of warms my heart. And it's just like he's helping to bring in the next generation of wrestling fans, and that's kind of cool. And actually, taking a look at the fans throughout the entire arena, there were a lot of women in that crowd. There were a lot of young kids and stuff in the crowd. It was it was very diverse, and it kind of shows how like wrestling's kind of like opening up and kind of becoming more something for everybody.
Well, and the women are into it. Like, it's not like there's this there to accompany their partner in life. Like, they are just as into it, and I love it. It's great. Well, because we actually have women wrestlers of all body shapes, of all sizes, of all colors, and just it's amazing. I'm really disappointed. That's the one thing I got to say about Dynamite last night, was that out of a 2-hour show, you got to have more than one women's match. I mean, I was really disappointed. At least a 6-on-6 or something. I mean, I know that was a stacked card, but you can't promote a women's division and only have one match per show.
Which
is a killer match, mind you, but you got to do a little bit more than that, and I was really disappointed in that.
One of the things that I absolutely fully agree with you on here, and I agree with everything you just said, is that throughout all the storylines that have been developing throughout the first 4 pay-per-views, there was very little character development and storyline development for the women in general. You know, you've got like the big overarching Cody Rhodes story with Shawn Spears, and you know, like all this stuff going back to he takes on Tully Blanchard and his history and all this kind of stuff. But with the women, it's like, well, yeah, she's a Joshi wrestler from Japan, but it's like, but who is she? You know, or why is she having, like, Ali versus the Librarian, when that match happened, it was like, well, why are they fighting each other? Why does it matter? Who's the Librarian? And by the Librarian, I should mention, I mean Leva Bates, not Peter Avalon, because there are 2 librarians.
Lord help us all.
But yeah, absolutely agree that there's that more development needs to happen there. But I think getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, because the following match was Pac versus Hangman Page, Adam Page, who did not come out on a horse tonight.
I know. It's never going to happen again. And I'm maybe.
What did you think of this match?
I thought it was really good. I enjoy me some Hangman, and Pac is awesome. I mean, I didn't really know much about Hangman for, his wrestling. I just knew him from BTE, and he's really grown on me. That's a big boy, and he's doing a lot of flips and a lot of moves, and I think it's good he didn't win the championship. He's not ready, but he's gonna get it. I have no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, I know at All Out, I was all for the guy. Like, I wanted him to win that match, which again, I think kind of feeds into the whole, with AEW, it's just like, you have your favorites, but like, you boo the bad guys and you cheer the good guys, and you actually just do have an appreciation for the story that they're trying to tell. Maybe because they seem to take these things seriously, so it becomes easy to get drawn into them. But speaking specifically of this particular match, possibly the best match that Hangman has wrestled for AEW.
Yeah, I'll agree. He seemed a little sloppy at All Out, a little slow. But this was definitely, he came to play tonight.
And Pac was... Is it Pac?
It is Pac.
It is Pac.
Pac.
He's a phenomenal athlete, and just watching that guy is a joy. Seeing him actually pull off the Black Arrow to not quite end the match. He did his submission hold, which, for the life of me, I can't remember. The Brutalizer, I believe it is. So he went straight from the Black Arrow, which, if you haven't seen it, he gets onto the top rope, and as he jumps off, he's spinning horizontally and vertically backwards at the same time. It's almost like a shooting star press, but kind of a corkscrew spin all at the same time. It is just, it's one of those things where you kind of have to like rewind it and be like, wait, what just happened? And even see it in slow motion just to be like, just to even know what you just saw. And then he landed and then immediately transitioned into his brutalizer submission move. Now, that was kind of an awkward finish for me.
Yeah, it was. I agree.
The camera angle was off. So I think it was Earl Hebner who was the official on that match. Mm-hmm. He called it almost immediately, but the camera angle that they were showing, you couldn't really see either one of Adam Page's hands. So it was like, was he tapping or I mean, it was just like he popped on the move and within maybe 5 seconds, like the match was over. And it was hard to kind of keep up and know exactly why. You know, he was pretty close to the ropes at that point, you know, like there was no struggle. But it does really sell that move. That was the same move that brought Kenny Omega down, and that felt a little abrupt. When he applied it to Kenny at All Out, like Kenny was actually holding him up. You know, he was so Kenny was standing as he took the move, and then finally he dropped, and then it was over. One of the things that I think for me that I really like is that in AEW, if you lose by submission, it's just a loss. Like, if, like, going back to, like, say, WWE, it's like, if you tap out, like, that's a super loss. Like, you just couldn't hack it. You couldn't take the pain, and so it makes the loser, you know, seem particularly weak because they gave in. But in this, it's like, nah, dude. You want, if you know your bones are about to be broken and you don't have a way out, it's like you have to make sure you're healthy to fight another day. And they give that ability. So it also makes like submission finishes not a rarity, but somebody can be a submission specialist and, you know, be able to win a match this way on a regular basis, as much as like any other finisher. Mm-hmm. So that's just another thing that I noticed. You know, one of the things I have here in my notes, when the match started, they announced both competitors, then they went to commercial, and then when they came back, the bell rang almost immediately, but Hangman Adam Page was inside the ring, and Pac was not. Usually, in every match I've ever seen, you know, the bell doesn't start until both competitors are in the ring facing each other and ready to go. So I kind of found that a little...
Was that an official match then?
Yeah, well, I mean, technically, yeah. It's one of the things where with AEW, I'm just not sure what the rules are.
The rule is there are no rules.
That's something, and it feels that way. Because multiple times throughout the course of the show, things that would have normally been a disqualification didn't really seem to be that way. The following match after Page and Pac was Nyla fighting Riho for to become the winner would become the first ever AEW Women's Champion.
This to me was the match of the night. Like,
absolutely.
I loved this match. I would have bet anyone and everyone that Nyla Rose is going to walk away with that championship.
I absolutely agree.
Just pure size alone. But I was drawn in the entire match. I was shocked. I was screaming. Riho, she's amazing. We
should really kind of point out and describe the size difference of these two competitors. Nyla is she's got to be what, like 200 pounds at least.
At
right?
least. Mostly muscle.
Yeah, like literally double the size of Riho. Riho is tiny. She doesn't weigh. I think Jim Ross billed her as 98 pounds.
Yeah.
I'd be shocked if she weighs all of 98 pounds.
And if she's over 5 foot, I'd be shocked.
Yeah,
like, she is tiny.
She is tiny, but oh my God, is she fierce.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like, she really held her own. She used every wit about her. And these moves that she's pulling off. Like, I am really, either one of them, I would have been happy to have one of them as the inaugural champion. And Nyla's going to get it. Don't get me wrong.
Her time will come.
Her time will come. It's not... I think they made the wise decision to give it to Riho because she is so inventive. She is so much fun to watch. And she held her own. And you're right. She's tiny but mighty.
Yeah, the fact that you could actually believe that this, I don't want to say little girl, but, this
petite woman,
thank you, was actually capable of taking down Nyla it really speaks to how talented and natural of a performer she is in the ring. But getting back to the thing that I was saying before about the rules, halfway through the match, they're outside the ring and Nyla goes and she grabs a chair. Referee's right there. She was going to smack her with it. And it's like, wait, in my head, I'm thinking, if she hits Riho with that chair, she's going to be disqualified. Why would she throw that match away? But it's as something that we would see even later in the show. There doesn't seem to be automatic disqualifications for things like interference and use of foreign objects. So I don't know if old school ECW rules apply where it's just whatever, man. Chairs are just whatever you have to do in order to win is just the way it is. I don't know if it's supposed to be like that or whatever. And
I feel like for me, I'm constantly comparing it to WWE or ECW or something. And I have to tell myself that this is AEW. This is its own thing. They're making their own rules. So everything I was comfortable with or expected, I'm just trying to throw it out the window and see and just have faith in those guys that they're going to lead us down the right trail.
Yeah. I think it's over time we'll kind of figure these things out.
Yeah.
But the commentators, were referring to things being at the referee's discretion, which feels very New Japan Pro Wrestling-ish. But I feel like just in the beginning they should probably be spelling these things out maybe a little more. Back to the match, though.
God, that was a killer match.
It was so good. But Nyla, in not hitting Riho directly with a chair, she would go on to just make a pile of chairs outside the ring, and she would place Riho on top of them. She got up onto the ring apron to do a senton. Riho moved out of the way, and so just spine first, Nyla went into that pile of chairs, which probably was the turning point of the match. That really took a lot out of Nyla and gave Riho...
She flipped around a couple times on the floor. That really freaking hurt, man. I could see it. Those chairs in the back are not fun.
It is. It officially was a sick bump. And it's not one that I would ever want to take. Yeah, I'm kind of in awe with her ability to take something like that, to see something like that in the women's division, especially the first time out, very first show, shows you that the women's division is not the lesser division. These girls are going to go all out and they're going to give it absolutely everything.
If they give us more than one match.
Yeah.
I mean, let's hope that they do.
But they are every bit as tough as the male competitors.
And Britt Baker was on commentary. Let's not forget that. She didn't say anything really of any importance.
It's easy to forget almost that she was there. It seems like she is looking forward to be taking them on. I guess by her being there, does that make her the number one contender? I don't think she's much of a trash talker. She's just... she might have just been satisfied to just let things play out. Yeah. Maybe she was just so invested in the match. for a lot of these competitors who are, coming out of the indies, sometimes you're just happy to be there. Like,
Right.
that's Jim Ross you're sitting next to. He's calling this match, That's Tony Schiavone. Like, if you have a history of, late 90s, early aughts wrestling, like, these guys, like, were, it. You grew up on them,
I also want to say about the Nyla Riho match, I got to give it up to the crowd. That crowd was into it.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of times you see women's wrestling matches and they cut to commercial, or it doesn't really happen, or the crowd's rude and they're chanting other chants. But no, this crowd was into it. They were appreciative. They were clapping. They were, screaming. They were freaking out in disbelief at some of the moves that Riho was making. So the fans want it. We want our women wrestlers, and AEW, I'm talking to you directly. If you say that you're going to listen to your fans, give us more than one match.
Yes, absolutely. Finally, we have the main event of the night. And the main event was the Elite. It was represented by the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega, going up against Chris Jericho, the AEW World Champion, as well as the newcomers Santana and Ortiz. The match didn't get very far before we had interference by Jon Moxley. Up until that point, Kenny Omega was kind of doing his thing. Now, this is kind of interesting, and I kind of almost like how they're doing this. I'm sure that most people who aren't into the indies and aren't into, like, New Japan, who are just, like, full-on WWE fans, have probably heard about this Kenny Omega guy, who is, basically called all up and down the, like, greatest wrestler fighting today. But he only got maybe a minute or so in the ring, and he was doing some impressive stuff, but just really early in that match, in comes Jon Moxley.
Who I totally forgot about, actually. We were so excited to see him at All Out, and then obviously he couldn't make it, and we were so bummed.
Staph
and
infection
then
on his that required surgery.
And then he popped up, and I'm like, oh, it's Mox. All right, let's do this.
So Mox just takes it to Kenny Omega. And the thing is that, and of what I was saying earlier, with, like, not knowing what the rules are, he takes Kenny Omega outside the ring. They fight through the crowds. They go through the VIP section of the arena.
Wait, you gotta include the mop.
And the mop. You
The
talk
cleaner.
about the mop. The cleaner, Kenny Omega in Japan, known as the cleaner, was one of his gimmicks, which I believe is a reference to the movie The Professional, with
Jean Reno.
Jean Reno, thank you, and Natalie Portman when she was still a little girl, and
He just looks like the Terminator to me.
Jean Reno was he was an assassin, but he referred to himself as a cleaner. So just so another term for assassin, like a hitman, so you've got Kenny Omega with the mop, kind of mopping up a bit before he smacks Moxley with it a couple of times. But Mox ended up getting the upper hand and just suplexed him through a glass table, which shattered upon impact.
Ouch.
And that looked brutal. But the point that I've been trying to get to is that no disqualification. And outside, a person who was not scheduled to be in the match comes in, interferes, takes out one of the competitors, and yet the match doesn't end. There's no DQ. Back in the ring, it's now a 3-on-2 match with Jericho, Santana, and Ortiz against now the outnumbered Young Bucks.
I thought it would have been super cool and out of the ordinary if they would have gone to, like, split screen so we could see what was happening with Mox and Omega and what was happening with the
1970s Brian De Palma action.
I think that would have been cool, super cool, because, like, I wanted to know what was happening. Obviously something was happening, but I don't know. I thought that would have been a cool touch.
Yeah.
But.
So after the glass table bump, cut to commercial, and when they came back, finally we're back to the in-ring action with the now outnumbered Young Bucks. And the Young Bucks were holding their own, and it was impressive. Things were going pretty well for them up until the point where they weren't. Finally, the numbers game caught up to them, and they ended up losing the match. But that's not where things would end. So then what happened next? Who's the next person in? Was that did Hager come in?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Hagar, it's Jake Hagar, who will know, those of you who are WWE fans will remember as Jack Swagger. Yeah. He hits the ring and he just starts messing the Bucks up. And then Cody hits the ring. Now Cody got demolished in the opening of the show. So he goes backstage, gets himself cleaned up, and he's back into a suit because he is such a suave dude. So he comes out to save the Bucks, and he's kicking a little bit of butt, and then all of a sudden we've got, Sammy Guevara comes in. They are pummeling Cody, so he's outmatched. And then Dustin comes in, and it's just this big, giant thing, but ultimately the heels just completely overcome them to stand tall at the end.
Yeah, and Kenny's nowhere to be found. I'm curious to see
that must have been one heck of a he was selling that coffee table bump.
So yeah, I'm waiting to see what happens on Being the Elite when they post the next one.
Now, one of the things that kind of my pet peeves with wrestling is the Teddy Long play a special where you've got these guys who are in a feud, and you've got these other guys who are in a completely different feud, and just as a match that means next to nothing, you just combine them. So you put the heels on one team and you put the faces on another, and then you have them fight a meaningless match as a way of kind of stalling their feud until the next pay-per-view. Usually not the sort of thing that I'm big on. But with this trio's tag team match, this totally worked for me. I thought it was great. I'm really glad that they didn't end it when Mox interfered, because when he popped up in the ring, I'm like, oh, okay, this is over. But no, it kept going on. We got a definitive winner and a definitive loser, and the Bucks can go. Them in the ring, their flippy stuff, man. It's so good.
It's pure magic.
So that ends up being the end of the show. But one of the things that apparently happened during the commercial break after Mox took out Kenny Omega is somebody in the crowd took a hot dog and they threw it into the ring at Chris Jericho.
What?
This is true. I am not making this up. There's video and it exists. Chris Jericho then gets
fun and all.
I think it was just the hot dog. So Chris Jericho gets on the mic and he's like, "Whose wiener is this?" And he squishes it in his hands. Now the crowd they don't miss a beat. All of a sudden, they break out in a chant of "That's my wiener."
Clap, 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 clap.
It's one of those things you just wish that you had been there for that, because that had to have been amazing.
That wiener moment is somebody else's horse's moment.
There you go. It's
bringing it full circle. See how I did that? Bringing it all full circle.
Apparently, the police officers did end up detaining and talking to the person who was responsible for throwing the food stuff into the ring. Guys don't do that. I mean, but yet, I don't know. It turned out entertaining, so maybe that was the wrong thing.
Well, at least a whole and everybody didn't start throwing their wieners into the crowd, because
oh my gosh,
that would have been awful.
Back in the day,
Nobody wants
back
that
in
many
ECW,
wieners.
there was a match with, I believe it was, I think it was Mick Foley and Terry Funk. But as I'm remembering it, I kind of almost want to say like Public Enemy might have been there too, but I'm not sure that was the case. At any rate, Mick Foley wanted a chair, so he called out for somebody to like hand him a chair, and all of a sudden everybody started taking their folding chairs and throwing them into the ring until the entire ring, Terry Funk was buried underneath all of them. Yeah, we don't need to see that. It's one of the things that really kind of bugs me is when the audience decides to become kind of part of the show, and it's just let the performers perform. Even if there's the possibility that it could lead to something like Chris Jericho asking whose wiener this is.
Wieners and bubbly, they go good together.
All right, so that was the show. Let's talk about, very briefly, I want to go over the dark matches. The crowd got to see Darby Allin fight and defeat Shima. He defeated him with a coffin drop. That was the dark match before the show. There were 3 matches, dark matches, that happened afterwards. So after the cameras stopped rolling, they had 3 matches which were just for the audience in attendance. So they got to see the Lucha Brothers as well as Jack Evans and Angelico.
Oh, I bet that was a fun match.
No. That was one team.
Oh, ooh.
It was an 8-person tag match.
What? See, they can do it with the guys. Why they...
Well, I'm not finished. At any rate, they went up against the Best Friends with Orange Cassidy in attendance and Private Party, and the heels won out. The Lucha Brothers, Jack Evans and Angelico, were able to overcome. So that was the first of 3 dark matches. Also, there was Ali teaming up with Dr. Britt Baker, DMD. And they defeated the heel team of Bea Priestley and Penelope Ford. One of the things that has kind of subtly happened over the course of the first 4 pay-per-views is Britt Baker and Bea Priestley have this kind of very subtle feud that's going on. They were in a tag match at, I believe it was Fight for the Fallen, where...
I believe you are correct, sir.
And that was Bea Priestley's first match, and the beginning of that match...
And then promptly gave her a concussion.
Yeah, she ended up giving Britt Baker a concussion.
Like the first or second move, right?
Yeah, and so...
That's how you get it, girl.
Yeah, but that ended up carrying on into the women's casino battle royale at All Out, and I don't think that their business is in any way finished. The final dark match, SCU beat Jurassic Express, which I guess it's kind of a house showy dark match rematch of their match from All Out. I bet that was fun. All right, so next week they've got 2 matches that they've already announced. There's going to be Jon Moxley going up against Shawn Spears.
Ooh.
And then the very first match in the first round of the tag team tournament is going to be the Young Bucks versus Private Party.
Oh, I want both of those teams to win.
Right?
I don't know who I'm going to pick for my bracket on that one.
So there are 4 matches in the first round of the tag team championship tournament, and that'll be the first match, Young Bucks versus Private Party. There's also going to be the Lucha Brothers going up against Jurassic Express, as well as the Best Friends versus SCU. And I take it back. There's only 3 in the first round. The Dark Order ended up earning a bye and advancing straight to the second round.
I have a question for you for Lucha Express. Is that with Marco Stunt?
The Jurassic Express?
What did I say? Lucha Express? Oh, I was looking at them. Yeah, Jurassic Express. Is that just Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus? Or
yeah.
Marco Stunt was just kind of a one-timey thing?
Well, it's like SCU. They are they kind of have a faction.
Oh, okay.
And so technically, or like think like the New Day.
Yeah.
Where any two of the three members can fight. So it's like with SCU, how they decided that it's going to be Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels fighting in the tag team tournament, where they just have to decide in advance who it is that's going to be actually participating. Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to go over is that the ratings came out. AEW, the very first episode of AEW, is going head-to-head with NXT, as is going to happen every Wednesday in the foreseeable future.
On TNT.
Yeah, AEW on TNT, whereas the USA Network has picked up NXT. And this was the first time that NXT did a 2-hour show. The past 2 weeks, they did the first hour on the USA Network, and then you had to go back to the WWE Network to catch the second hour. But from here on in, it's going to be just 2-hour shows going face-to-face.
Head-to-head?
Head-to-head. That's the word I was looking for. So the ratings came out today for that. And AEW, on their opening debut show, 1.4 million total viewers.
All right, boys.
Now, with the age demographics that advertisers and thus the networks care about, they got 878,000 within the 18 to 49 age demographic.
Ooh, the moneymaker demographic.
And they won. They destroyed NXT. NXT scored 891,000 total viewers, but only less than half of that was from the 18 to 49 age demographic. So this was a great night for AEW. I hear that NXT was a fantastic show, but I'm not going to get a chance to watch it until probably tomorrow. It was almost like a mini takeover. WWE had pulled out all the stops. They put a championship match between Adam Cole and Matt Riddle.
Tell me Adam Cole won, please.
Adam Cole won. Though injured, ended up beating him, I believe, with... hit him with a cast or some such.
Hit him with a surfboard?
That would have been interesting. So they were doing like limited commercial interruptions. They let it go 15 minutes over so that when AEW re-aired their show immediately after playing it the first time through, so that I would interrupt their stuff. But none of this seemed to really steal AEW's thunder. That was a commanding victory. And we'll see how things kind of move along next week. But also, like of note, AEW was the number 2 show last night in all of cable.
Wow.
The only show that had more viewers on cable television Wednesday night was a Major League Baseball playoff game. So, like, they even
in the playoffs this year.
I don't
sports
watch baseball.
teams.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You're the baseball
Sorry,
girl.
Dad.
They beat out American Horror Story. Like, so, congratulations to All Elite Wrestling. That's one heck of that's one heck of a first showing.
And I think it's just gonna get better.
Yeah.
There's a lot of buzz.
It was a 2-hour show, and it just flew by.
Yeah.
Like, I'm looking at the time and thinking, like, maybe half an hour had passed, and like it was like we're over halfway through. Great matches, just the pacing, just getting rid of all of the just talking segments and the recap segments and everything. It was almost pure action. Even
mind you,
the
there's nothing to recap yet. You know what I mean?
Well,
we'll see how it happens as the storylines grow.
Well, I mean, yes, but think about like the average episode of Raw. You have a 20-minute talking segment, generally, is how it starts. And then something at the end of that happens. So before they even set up the first match, like, you are just watching people talk back and forth for 20 minutes. And then the events of that 20 minutes, like every half an hour when they come back from commercial, they end up rehashing those events for like another 2 minutes.
Right.
So it's just, monotonous, and then, finally here's a match. But that match ends up being like, a 4.5 minute squash or something like that. Whereas, like, everything that we were seeing in AEW last night felt like it meant something.
Yeah.
And the action was great. I can't wait to see where things go. This was them putting their best foot forward. And, yeah, it just hit the end, and I just now can't wait to see what happens next week.
Absolutely.
So that feels like a good place to end. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you back here next week. Next Friday, we'll have a new episode out here for the CJW podcast. Bye, everybody.
Asta.